What if I told you that Europe's history is incomplete? That a crucial piece of the puzzle, the Black influence on European civilization, has been erased, forgotten, or deliberately hidden? Stay with me as we uncover the powerful and untold story of Black people's contributions to Europe. Long before the transatlantic slave trade, Black people had already made their mark on Europe. The Moors were not the first. History goes back to the Roman Empire and even beyond. The African presence in ancient Greece and Rome, including figures like Emperor Septimius Severus. Black populations in Britain during Roman times, as proven by skeletal remains and historical records. The role of the Carthaginians, led by Hannibal in European warfare. The Nubian warriors who influenced Mediterranean trade and military tactics. Archaeological evidence of African settlements in early Europe. The trade routes that connected Africa with Europe, allowing for cultural exchange and intermarriage. The mysterious Black Madonna statues found across Europe, hinting at a deeper historical connection. How African craftsmanship and artistic styles influenced European art. The role of African traders in the early spice and gold trades, which connected Europe to Africa's wealth. The presence of Black scholars in the philosophical circles of ancient Greece and Rome. How the African connection influenced European shipbuilding and navigation. The stories of African gladiators in Rome who became legends in the arenas. The impact of Egyptian and Nubian influences on Greek philosophy and architecture. The forgotten Black philosophers and teachers who influenced Socrates and Plato. The role of African-built cities in the Mediterranean trade networks. How African science and medicine influenced early European medical practices. The African roots of European royal insignia, symbols, and traditions. The migration of African artisans to Europe, bringing architectural expertise and craftsmanship. Who were the Moors? A civilization of African and Arab descent that ruled parts of Spain and Portugal for nearly 800 years. Their contributions to science, mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. How the Moors transformed Spain into an intellectual powerhouse with libraries, universities, and advanced engineering. The Alhambra, a masterpiece of African influence in Europe. The Moorish influence on European fashion, language, and cuisine. How they introduced advanced agricultural techniques, transforming Spain into a flourishing land. The impact of Moorish scholars on the European Renaissance. The eventual fall of the Moors and how their legacy was erased from European history books. The continued genetic and cultural imprint of the Moors on modern-day Spain and Portugal. The architectural innovations that the Moors brought to European city planning and fortress design. The role of African Moors in shaping European medicine, including the development of hospitals and surgical procedures. The secret libraries of Moorish Spain, where thousands of manuscripts in science and philosophy were kept. The African astronomers who mapped the stars for European navigators. The influence of Moorish music on flamenco and European classical compositions. The advanced mathematics taught by Moorish scholars that influenced European engineering. The irrigation and farming techniques that revolutionized European agriculture. The hidden African ancestry of Spanish and Portuguese royal families due to Moorish rule. How the Moors introduced African textiles and dyes that influenced European fashion. The lasting impact of Moorish scientific knowledge on modern European education. The Black African generals who led Moorish armies against European kingdoms. The forgotten African saints of Christianity, Saint Maurice, Saint Benedict the Moor, and more. How Black religious figures were venerated in medieval Europe. The existence of Black nobility in Europe, including noble families in Germany, Russia, and Portugal. The depiction of Black rulers in heraldry and royal lineage. The role of African traders and merchants in funding European religious institutions. The hidden African ancestry of several European royal families. How the Christianization of Africa created a religious bridge between Black populations and European kingdoms. The black religious figures who played a role in shaping European theological debates, the influence of African spirituality on European religious practices and mysticism, the presence of African monks in European monasteries, and their contributions to religious scholarship. How black religious leaders influenced European debates on morality and law. The connection between African religious traditions and European folk beliefs. The role of black bishops in shaping early Christianity in Europe. The black saints who were widely venerated before their histories were hidden. The African influence on medieval religious art and iconography. How African trade routes helped spread Christianity and Islam into Europe. The cultural impact of African religious festivals in medieval Europe. The black theologians whose works were studied by European scholars. The presence of African symbols in European churches and religious texts. How African warriors helped defend Christian Europe during religious conflicts. The impact of African scholars on the European Renaissance. How Moorish scientific knowledge fueled the rebirth of art, philosophy, and science in Europe. Black musicians and poets who influenced European literary traditions. The African presence in European royal courts during the Renaissance. How African explorers contributed to Europe's age of exploration. The forgotten role of African engineers in shaping Renaissance architecture. The influence of African medicine and healing practices on European doctors. How black artists shaped European portraiture and artistic styles. The hidden African ancestry of some of the most famous European artists and composers. The role of black musicians in shaping classical European music. The connection between African and European textile industries in the Renaissance. How African dance and performance styles influenced European entertainment. The contributions of African astronomers to Renaissance scientific discoveries. The impact of African philosophers on European ethical and political thought. The involvement of black figures in early European publishing and book printing. The presence of African scholars in universities across medieval and Renaissance Europe. The black mathematicians who influenced Renaissance architectural design. How African storytelling traditions were integrated into European literature. The role of black artisans in sculpting and decorating European cathedrals. How African healing practices were adopted by Renaissance European physicians. The hidden history of Africa's contributions to the European Renaissance is one that needs to be acknowledged and celebrated. By understanding these connections, we gain a fuller picture of history, one that recognizes the invaluable role Africa played in shaping the modern world. Want to learn more about the untold stories of history? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content that brings hidden history to life.